Hello everyone, this is Jorge Diaz and this is episode 2 of How Do You Define Infusionsoft Success. I'm here with Adrian Savage. Great name, by the way. Adrian is someone I met through a client. I had a client that's a big Infusionsoft user, a big Memberium user. We built a nice, big, elaborate membership project for him. And one of the issues they were having is that emails were not being delivered. In particular, she was doing a lot of work with some financial service companies that have, my understanding, and Andrew will tell us a little bit more about this, some financial services exchange servers, or I don't know, different sorts of environments where they're more susceptible to not liking Infusionsoft emails. And that's how we met. So familiar with his solution, and wanted to kind of bring him on the program and just talk to him about his thing. So Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I've been Infusionsoft partner, certified consultant for about 3.5 years now. I've been an IT geek since I was about 6 or 7 years old, so very, very long time ago. Discovered Infusionsoft when I quit my job. Wasn't sure what I was going to do at first, but I had a bit of a life-changing experience when my ex-wife moved to the other end of the UK with my kids, so I wasn't seeing them so much. And I was very lucky find Infusionsoft as something that became very good at. So
you left corporate, I guess not America, but corporate UK to have a better lifestyle. I guess that was the driver.
Yeah, that was the big thing, because it was a 5-hour journey to go and see my kids, and I got to the point where I was seeing them maybe every third weekend. So this has just given me the freedom and flexibility to just see them when I want, when I can. So I go up every Wednesday to see them. They come to stay with me every other weekend, and yeah, not without its challenges, obviously. There's no safety net running your own business, but it's been, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think I'm unemployable now. I've had some great clients, learnt a massive amount, met some brilliant, wonderful people through working with Infusionsoft, and I get to come to Arizona twice a year as well, where the weather is much better than the UK, so it's all good. There you go.
And you're probably not doing that in the middle of the summer either.
No, I'll avoid Arizona in the summer. I think that would just about melt me, probably. But yeah, 18, 90 degrees, that's good for me. That's a hot day in the UK.
Great. Well, so let me ask you, so here you are, you're sitting there no longer in these, I guess, the more populated parts of the UK, and how did you stumble upon this?
So it's quite an interesting story, because every now and then I've worked with a client where, for different reasons, they've had problems where they can't necessarily get their emails to be received by their audience when they're sending through Infusionsoft. And for many years, first couple, 2-3 years, we like most people, we had to accept it and say it's one of those things. And then one day I discovered I was helping a client with a website, actually, and they were having problems getting emails sent from the websites to their audience, because they were using shared web hosting and the IP address of their website had been blacklisted. So
this is on the web server itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So the web server itself is one of these cheap and horrible web shared hosting providers, maybe a couple of hundred users on this shared hosting. Some of them had sent a load of rubbish out, and obviously the IP got blacklisted. So my client, there was no way he could get his messages out. So it was then I did a bit of Googling, and I found something called Mandrill, which they call themselves a transactional mail provider. And what that meant in this case is that my client could put a WordPress plugin onto his website and get the WordPress plugin to send all the emails to his members via Mandrill, and suddenly they started arriving, because Mandrill had this much higher level of reputation than this blacklisted IP address of his website. And that would have been that if it wasn't for the fact that I then started talking to another client who, I think she had 3 customers that she couldn't get emails to inside Infusionsoft. And these 3 customers were big enough, high enough profile that if they cancelled on her, then she'd lose a lot of money. And I started to think to myself, well, if Infusionsoft can't get through for whatever reason, I didn't know what the reason was at that point, then maybe if she uses something like Mandrill, then we could do that. So I did a bit of testing and proved that the mail was getting through from Mandrill and not from Infusionsoft.
So
and she did all the right things.
did you find that it was more specific to some types of customers? Because, you know, I manage a lot of Infusionsoft accounts for folks, and some people, we don't see any issues at all, and then for others, it's a big issue.
Yes. So this client I was working with, she actually trains recruitment consultants. And a couple of them, they had all outsourced their email service to some corporate email provider. And this corporate email provider, as it turns out, they just had all kinds of blacklists on there, and some genius had decided that any email that was sent from Infusionsoft was scum. And they didn't just put it in the spam like you'd expect, where you can go and find it and fish it out. They were actually...
So that's the receiver. The receiver is blacklisting you, right?
Correct. Absolutely. And to be fair to Infusionsoft, they did everything they could to solve this. She raised a ticket with them. Their deliverability guys had a look. And it got to the point where the company looking after this mail server would just refuse to engage. They wouldn't do anything. And at that point, Infusionsoft had to say, "I'm sorry, we can't help you anymore."
Right. And I tell you what, you know, again, you know, I'm a big supporter of Infusionsoft and their compliance guys. I mean, I'm telling you, they'll shut you down if you start getting too many spam complaints. I've actually been called in to kind of salvage folks who have kind of crossed that line. Yeah. So, you know, I have a lot of experience working with them as well as with, you know, the iContacts, Constant Contacts, MailChimps of the world. So they're top notch and they're wanting to fix some things, but I guess in some cases you just can't work around what some receiver email systems are doing.
Yeah. And this is it, you know, I mean, when in the past Infusionsoft has had problems where, you know, I think there was a problem where they couldn't get to Hotmail and things like that a few times. And every time then they've worked round the clock to fix it. And someone as big as Hotmail, they will engage with Infusionsoft and they'll solve the problem. So the difficulty here was this was some kind of, you know, backwards 2-cent email company that, you know, they probably had one man and his dog running the whole outfit, and they were just ignoring everything. So gotcha. There was absolutely crazy. And there was no real reason for them to reject this email. I think that just obviously they'd had some kind of marketing email or maybe something a little bit spammy from some Infusionsoft user somewhere, and they just decided they were going to tar all Infusionsoft users with the same brush and say, right, that's it, we're
without getting, you know, I don't want to. We're working jointly on a customer who's used your solution, and that's drastically improved her deliverability. Can you kind of walk us through, for example, what were the particulars? Because it seemed like she had issues with financial service companies and the way they go about setting up their mail servers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is it. I mean, what I found was that these three companies, they were all using the same provider, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't even a big well-known provider or anything like that. I mean, I'll come to the different audiences that we've had challenges that we've resolved in a few moments. But with this one, what we found was that, you know, because there was no way that Infusionsoft could solve the problem, then I sent a test mail through Mandrill, and it got through first time. Now, this isn't to say that Mandrill's better than Infusionsoft or anything like that, because I can give you other examples where the problem's been the other way around, believe it or not. But what we found for this particular client, then that solved the problem. And at that point, then I didn't have any way of connecting Infusionsoft to Mandrill. And that was where I started to have lots of ideas and thoughts, burning the midnight oil. And after about a week of starting work at 9 o'clock at night and finishing at 5 or 6 in the morning, I finally got to the point where I've been able to actually...
Which would be fine if you were in the US, by the way.
Say again, sorry?
Yeah, those 9 to 6 hours are actually okay if you're in the US because of the time change, but not over there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was working all the way through the night. My wife thought I was crazy. I think the final day I did it, I had my kids for the weekend, and I just had to stop at that point because I was going to be spending time with the kids. But I just about nailed it, and I tried, you know, I mean, I'm very lucky because my background, I've been a geek for 30 odd years, and I've worked with email servers, I've worked with Unix, I've worked with Linux, I've worked with Infusionsoft, I've worked with all kinds of internet admin and web and things like that, and I've been writing software code since I was about 9 years old. So I was very lucky that I had all the different bits of knowledge that I needed to piece all this together. And I just wasn't going to stop until I got it working. But I tell you, the number of different bits of open source software I tried and tested and threw to one side, and when I finally got it working, you can imagine that there was quite a celebration. And it was not long after that that I actually went over to Icon in March of this year and started talking to a few people about what I've
As a
done.
matter of fact, that's when I think I initially heard about you through David Bullock over at Memberium.
Yeah,
and he was
absolutely.
the one that I think got it.
David. Yeah, bumped into David completely by accident, mentioned what I'd done, and yeah, David's been brilliant because he knew a couple of people who were having challenges. And the first person he introduced me to was the client that you and I have been working with. And as you said, she was really at the end of her tether because the emails that she was sending out were her billing and payment links.
Yeah, she couldn't renew her subscription, which is a big issue.
Exactly. She couldn't charge her customers. So, she was losing a significant 5-figure sum every month because the majority of her audience were all financial service providers, like you said, and because of the way that the recipients were running their emails, again, no fault of Infusionsoft, then she just wasn't able to get through. And again, she'd gone through the support guys at Infusionsoft, and they'd done everything they could.
Yeah, they
fix
did.
This.
I was a part of working that sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did. They really worked hard on it. But the difficulty is you can't, you can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. In this case, the horse wouldn't even come to the water, I don't think. Some of these people just would not engage with Infusionsoft, and they just, pretty much, no, this is scum, we're not going to touch it, which is outrageous.
Yeah.
But luckily, that gave me a perfect initial trialist to see if this worked or not. So we had a few chats on the phone, and we started setting it up. And I remember the first time we sent a test message from her Infusionsoft through to WeDeliver email through to the end user, and it was she had someone who she could phone up and say, well, did you get it or not? And suddenly I can still remember how amazed and how delighted she was when she rang this person, and they actually said, yes, I've received your mail. It's the first one I've received for you in months.
Wow. That was great.
So.
By the way, this I didn't know because I was taking over. I mean, I was working on other parts of the project, and this was going on behind the scenes. So let me ask you, if you can give us a little bit of an overview of how it works. I know that you're basically setting up an email too that takes the place. Right. So if you kind of walk through, I mean, not everybody here is dying to get into the nitty gritty, but if you can kind of give us an overview of how this works, just so we can get a conceptual idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the one thing I will say is, yes, this is a complicated solution, unfortunately. Because we're doing something that Infusionsoft didn't design into the system, then there are a few steps in the process that we have to go through.
Well, by the way, in your defense, it's complicated. Your implementation is complicated, but how you integrate it into Infusionsoft campaigns, once you kind of get it, it's not rocket science because a lot of the magic happens behind the scenes.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the beauty behind it. There is a bit of pain to set it up in the first place, but the majority of clients using the software now, then after the first couple of weeks where they've just been setting it all up, I never hear from them again because it just sits there and it works, and that is the beauty behind it. So for some guys, we've provided a done-for-you setup service just to take that bit of the pain away. Other guys who are technically minded, they're quite happy to work through it and do it themselves. So you're absolutely right. So in a nutshell, and not everyone knows this, but every Infusionsoft contact record actually has 3 email addresses in there. Right. Normally, we just use the first one.
Like on the third tab over. You don't typically run into it.
Yeah, that's it. So what we do there is we actually, for every single contact that needs to receive emails, then we create, I call it a virtual email address. So that might be some, it'll be something at WeDeliver.email, and that virtual email address, it'll be a separate, unique one for every single contact.
Right.
And what the system does, it actually creates that, and it populates the email address to field inside Infusionsoft for every single contact. And then once that's done, then if you're sending a broadcast mail, you do it in exactly the same way, and the only change you have to make is to change it so that you're sending to email address 2 rather than the standard email.
Right.
And you're doing it within a campaign.
Email 1 continues to be the one you're used to seeing.
Say again, sorry?
Email 1 continues to be the email you'd expect to be there, as opposed to like
Yes.
a cryptic looking one.
That's right. That's right. And the reason I chose to do it that way is because people do use things like membership sites and Memberium and other things where
right.
the
you would have broken the login.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And also it would confuse the hell out of people, right, if they suddenly see this weird hieroglyphic as their email. So the beauty here is that email 1 works and everything, any integrations carry on working, and all we're doing is we're just sending the mail out to the second address. Similarly with a campaign, all you've got to do is go into the campaign builder and you have to just change the emails over so that instead of sending it to email address 1, you're sending it to email address 2. And that if you've got hundreds of messages in a campaign, that can be a little bit of a nightmare. But again, once it's done the one time, then that's okay. There is one little wrinkle, though, one little gotcha with campaigns, and that's obviously if you've got a web form or if you've got people opting in or any other way of adding people to Infusionsoft, then obviously you've got to have some kind of process in place to set up email address 2 for those new people that sign up. Right. Does that make sense? So the difficulty there is finding a reliable way to do that. And actually, it is quite simple. The same way, if you're familiar with Memberium and things like that, where you've got an HTTP post to tell the server to create a new user, then it's the same kind of process for that. So we have an HTTP post that tells WeDeliver email to set up a new email 2 address for each contact as they opt in. And then just because I'm a bit paranoid and we have to make sure that it's definitely going to work, then we add a bit of looping logic in there as well. So if you look at the documentation, you'll find that it looks a bit weird and wonderful, but the reason we do it that way is because it's absolutely 100% vital that the email 2 is going to be set up. But once that's in place, that's pretty much it. There's a few other bits to do. The biggest issue you've got, obviously, is that you've got to make sure you're not sending emails that you haven't been given permission. And if you imagine this scenario, you're sending an email out via the second email address and they hit the unsubscribe button, they're only unsubscribing the email 2. They're not unsubscribing their primary email.
Right.
And that's pretty dangerous, because if you're still sending mails out via email 1 as well, for whatever reason, you're going to send an email to someone who hasn't unsubscribed yet. Sorry, who has unsubscribed, and you're sending stuff when you shouldn't. Right. And at that point, then suddenly you're putting yourself at risk for getting reported for spam. Wow. So the last bit of the jigsaw, if you like, is just putting a few bits of configuration in, running action and things like that, just to make absolutely sure that if anyone unsubscribes from any email, or if they hit something or it bounces, whatever it is, then we've got different bits of solution in place to make sure that it always unsubscribes both the email 1 and the email 2, so that there's no chance of sending an email to someone who has said, I don't want to hear from you anymore.
Okay, so I didn't realize that, so you've covered that as well. Very good.
Yeah,
so
that was...
Adrian, what's the name of this solution? I mean, if I wanted to go and find out about it, where would I go?
Yep, so the solution is WeDeliver Email, and the web domain, and I was very lucky to think of this, the URL, the website you go to is just wedeliver.email.
Wedeliver.email, okay, I got it. Very good. And I'll make sure that when we publish this, we'll kind of publish your URL there. This is I haven't heard of anybody else doing anything like this, and again, I've heard of a lot of people mention that they have email delivery issue, but more anecdotally, and it wasn't until this one customer that I had, here's proven facts, is people's emails are not getting through, and then here you came up with a solution. So very good. There was one more thing that Adrian definitely wanted to share with us, and that's when this doesn't work, which is probably just as important as when it does work. So Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the real issue here is this is a fairly unique solution, right? Takes a lot of setting up, and because one of my challenges was keeping up with the volume of Infusionsoft emails, I've had to build a big infrastructure, and I've had to price it. This isn't a 50-cent solution. You're talking $97, $297. Some of the big guys, they might be spending $1,000 a month with this because they're sending a few million emails. And the challenge with that is I have to have a massive infrastructure that can deal with maybe 200-300 emails a second that Infusionsoft sends out. That gave me many a sleepless night, because I had it working for our first client, but then suddenly one of the big guys wanted to try it, and it all fell in a massive heap. So the that means that you've got to be willing to spend the money to use the system. And that is only worth it if you know that you have a deliverability problem and you haven't been able to fix it already with Infusionsoft. So, I'm very clear about who this is for, who this isn't for, if that makes sense. If there's someone where they've got a problem, they know about it, they've spoken to Infusionsoft, Infusionsoft have done everything they can, and it's still not solved the problem, then that's when it's worth giving it a trial. And I always offer a 2-week, 50,000 mail trial at no charge, because I don't want people paying for this unless they know it's going to solve their problem.
Good.
At the same time, we've got people who have come to me saying, oh, I just want to get better deliverability. I think there's something wrong with Infusionsoft and I just want to use your system. And those are the guys that have tested it out and they have seen no improvement whatsoever. In some cases, they've actually seen a reduction in their open rate because actually Infusionsoft was doing a great job for them. And the difficulty, their engagement was poor. They weren't looking after their list. They weren't doing their hygiene. They weren't staying engaged. They weren't sending good content out. And unfortunately, We Deliver Email cannot solve the problem of sending out poor content and not engaging with your database.
Gotcha.
So as long as you're doing everything good to start with, and as long as you've done everything going through the Infusionsoft route, then it's absolutely worth giving it a go. But the website is very clear about this. It's not for people who aren't going through a lot of pain. If this isn't going to save you at least $100 a month, don't even think about it,
right,
because this is something that really works if you've got pain, if you've got a problem. Otherwise, it's a massive amount of work, and I wouldn't want to waste anyone's time. This is only for a very small group of people that know they've got a problem.
Good. Well, hey, thank you for that, words of wisdom, and it seems like you're trying to take care of both Infusionsoft and the customer. So, way to go.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you breaking out of, this for you, it's evening over there, so thank you for breaking away.
And, 7 o'clock, just dinner time in a minute, so it's timed perfectly.
Great. Well, hey, you have a great day, okay?
Thanks, George, and you enjoy the time, and I'm sure, hopefully, I will see you at PartnerCon if you're there.
Yep, plan on being there. Take care.
Grace bless.